So I was just reading up on the form. Looks like Gideon's starting to display some leash reactivity. He's 9 months. Some general obedience, I believe. And then you've only done so far a consultation with another trainer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead and fill me in.
Yeah, so we live in a one floor like apartment with other apartments above it. It's like a one house. And his behaviors when somebody comes in to do their laundry, he'll like start barking. And we have had troubles redirecting that behavior, like getting his attention away from that. Where we tried to make him, like, give him a command, like, sit, that he knows or something, and it's kind of hard to get his attention during then. Then we were, like, trying no, hush, like, many things. Now he kind of knows that we don't want him to bark, and he'll kind of be like, so, but still not great. It's mostly the behaviors around our home. We don't really have much issues like out on walks and stuff. It's mostly just in the home. If we have somebody come over, if somebody, even our neighbors are just like coming into the entryway, that kind of sets him off.
He can lay on there if he wants. It's fine. That's why I put it there.
You
Yeah.
can hold it if you want. So yeah, it's mostly like the in-home. It's very like stressful when he starts barking and gets like very agitated when somebody comes in, like either side, the front door or the laundry room. And we just want to help him learn that he can be calm and doesn't need to like be guard dog so much, even though that's in his DNA.
Yeah, I think there's like a little bit of protectiveness over us too. I think he's very well bonded to us. And we've noticed that the vet, if like we're holding him and then like the vets will like come close to him, sometimes he'll like do some barking at them.
Yeah.
Again, like when we're out on walks, he's more concerned with other dogs than other people. Like he usually just wants to like say hello, sniff them, see what they're doing. The bug is like very locked in.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're hoping to kind of redirect some of that focus. He's pretty, I think he'll hopefully be relatively like easy to train. It seems like he picks up on things pretty quickly and he's really smart. But I think just like getting him to focus on us, especially when we need him to, would be super helpful.
And also I wanted to add, so we started fostering him at 4 months, and then we like adopted him at when he was 4 months, and then when he was 5 months, so we had him for like a month. About a couple weeks into fostering him, we have like a backyard that's like closed.
It's a shared backyard.
Yeah, it's a shared backyard, and our neighbor on the 3rd floor has a German Shepherd as well, who is not dog friendly. So this was kind of like one weekend we hadn't really established how we want to go about, like both having, needing to let our dogs out. So we were taking him out on a leash, but the other dog wasn't on a leash, and he kind of lunged at Gideon, and I wasn't there, Max was there, but he like scooped Gideon up really fast because the other owner was like, just pick your dog up. And he was like still small, 4 months at that age, but it really like freaked him out. He like urinated, and the reaction was, or the like response was, we just kind of, I think you guys just went back inside.
Yeah,
was, like, a little freaked out.
Kept him out there for a little bit longer. The other dog like came down with a muzzle, but he was really freaked out. And I'm wondering if that's like maybe part of where like some of the territorialness comes over, especially around the house, like in the backyard. If he sees any of our neighbors, any dogs, he barks really loudly at them. And again, it's hard to redirect that other than just like coming inside, waiting for
To go away.
the backyard to clear out and you can try again. But it's kind of hard. We'd love to get to a place where you can be around other people in the backyard. Also, we've had like the same thing happening with friends coming over. He will bark at them at first. Usually we'll settle down after a few minutes. But then we've noticed with like sudden movements, once people start moving around again, he gets nervous again.
Yeah.
Barks. The whole cycle kind of starts over. So again, kind of working on him being calm around other people in his space.
Like for example, last weekend, our neighbor was coming down to do laundry, and I wasn't sure if she was still there, so I poked my head out, and she was like, "Hey, I'm still here, whatever." And he was like barking, but it was like, okay, like she's like really wants to be like involved and helping and like training, like she's like, I'm open to like waiting it out and like with his barking, so we've tried to just like kind of wait it out sometimes with her, and just in the space wait for him to like kind of calm down, and that initially takes like 3 minutes, then he'll usually lay down, and then we'll go to like give him reinforcement, like good job, whatever, and then he might start barking again, so we wait, and after like a couple of minutes usually he will calm down, but then every time like she'll move.
Trigger.
Yeah, so like I feel like he is making like a little bit of progress, but we are kind of unsure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also don't want it to get to a point where it gets worse or he starts having these behaviors everywhere else. So I think some like general obedience would be really helpful. He does okay on walks, but he likes to pull even with a prong collar.
That's going to be my next question. Was that your guys' doing a recommendation or?
Yeah.
So on walks, he was like pulling. We like watched a bunch of videos. We tried a bunch of things like just stopping, like turning around, going the other way, or like going back a couple feet. We tried that pretty consistently for a while. He wasn't really responding to just the collar or the harness. And I was just concerned when like I would be walking him, if there's like wet leaves or ice or stuff, like he was only gonna get stronger. And I was like, I don't want to be pulled down.
That happens.
Yeah.
I've had clients that have dislocated shoulders, broken fingers, broken hands, broken elbows, broken hips, just from too much pulling or being pulled down.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to have you do is you're going to take your prong collar. I'm going to have you scoot it up to the top of his neck here.
Yeah.
You're going to rotate it so that the chain is at the top of the head. And without any words and without any kind of positive reinforcement, what you're going to do is you're going to pull up on your leash to put upwards tension on the prong collar. And then with your opposite hand, you're going to press on his hindquarters to create a sitting motion. Okay? Again, we're not going to say anything and we're not going to praise him. Every time he gets up, you're just going to repeat this process.
Yeah.
Okay? So go ahead and pull up and then press down. Yep, push, push, push. Yeah, there you go. And then relax. Very good. Every time he gets up, you're going to repeat that. Okay? It might get a little annoying, but in time, you'll see what's going to happen. Okay? What happened with the other trainer? What was it that you didn't like?
Yeah, so
Up and push.
I was the only one who like initially went before. It was like a private trainer in connection with like a space that you can like rent out. So we were meeting there, and she was like, first, before going, like we need to make sure that we have like super high rewarding like treats. So she was like, I recommend. So she like sent me this recipe to make like these treats. And
to make?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, this is like a little bit involved. First of all, and then I was also like, so he has a sensitive tummy. When we first got him, he had like lots of diarrhea. I mean, like he was surrendered, had no idea what food they were originally feeding him. We, through the fostering people, they initially gave us like, cheap food that was donated, didn't like it, had to go on like the vet kibbles to get everything sorted out and stuff. So then I came with like some of the meatballs that I had made like on the recipe, and then she was like, oh, that is not enough meatballs, like we're gonna need way more than that. And I was like, okay, well, he does have like a sensitive tummy. This is the first time he's trying them. Like I didn't want to give him like this whole tray of meatballs.
Yeah.
Like what? I don't know. It's just it felt like a weird vibe. A little bit like from that. Then we did sort of like we're sitting like much farther apart than like right now, and then she kind of did a treat and retreat.
Okay.
process with him for a while.
Yep.
And
Good.
she like kind of changed her body positioning like a bunch of times to gradually be like standing and like moving around a little bit. And she was like, he's definitely has stranger danger kind of like a little bit. And he seems like tense a little bit. He's not relaxed. You can just tell by his like body language and stuff. And so that part I was like, that's fine. Then she sent us like some resources, and then kind of like we never heard from her again. And then we reached out. She was like, okay, well, like how are all the things like going on your own? And we were like, I mean, we're trying it. She had like a relaxation protocol for the dog for him, so where we would not give him the command to get down, but like first we lured him into down, gave like a bunch of treats, and then you eventually like reinforce more relaxed poses, eventually getting to like the rolling over the hip. And that was, so we would do that when somebody would come in, and that like was working, but he still,
The trigger.
yeah, it felt like we were doing this, but he wasn't like generalizing it.
Yep.
Like it was hard for us to like make it,
So you would stay relaxed.
yeah. So we were like not amazing, and I feel like we need like a little bit more hands-on with training him. It felt like she was pretty like hands-off, and we both are pretty busy, and we feel like we need like more guidance and help. And then I was like, I can't be making all these training meatballs all the time. Like, I
Did you
don't
try
know.
them? Are they good?
I did not try them.
They're
We
like,
like them,
they're about
but
50 or 60 breads at a time. But this
yeah,
big,
I only made them the one time, and I was like, I don't know, maybe.
That's crazy. I mean, just go to like I don't understand the making them. I understand using treats for training,
Yeah.
but like actually like making them.
She was
And
like,
it-
you have to be like super reinforcing.
Yeah, and he's like relatively food driven, so I feel like kibble or other, or even just like higher value treats that you buy at the store. Presume the trick for
Yeah.
some general stuff.
I gotcha. So it's a lot of great information. Okay, everything you're seeing is normal
Yeah.
for the dog that you have.
Yeah.
You actually nailed it on the head. You have a nervous dog.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now he's displaying anxiety. Do you know why he's becoming anxious?
Is it the new setting?
Yes, and
He
what
doesn't know
else?
what to do.
Yes, and what else?
He wants to like explore, maybe
And what are we telling him to do?
not do that.
Yes.
Stay.
Yes. Okay. So like that's why I said this is probably going to get annoying,
Yeah.
right? Because and you're doing a really good job is you keep repositioning them. So there's a few things here. One, genetically,
Yeah.
you have a nervous dog.
Yeah.
The anxiety here is most likely from what we'd call overstimulation. It's the brain's inability to relax,
Yeah.
which can look like anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay. Overstimulation is the constant need to do something. So before we started giving him direction, what was he doing?
Sniffing around.
Over there, under there, right?
Yeah.
So then, once we talked about the prong collar, I said, go ahead and bring them in. And now we're going to be very strict. And without any words or any praise, we're just going to keep repositioning them, right?
Yeah.
So the reason why we're not using words of praise is that creates energy, right? Good boy, right? And if we already have an overstimulated dog, the last thing he needs is emotional energy. Does that make sense? So it might take 30 to 40 minutes, but at some point I expect he's gonna relax and then finally lay down. And then 2 minutes later, he's probably gonna get up and gonna repeat the process
Yeah.
because we're going completely against what he's used to.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you mentioned he'll relax when everything's calm, and then when somebody moves, he triggers again.
Yeah.
That's typical nervous dog.
Yeah.
So we have fear, anxiety, nervousness, and then like aggression.
Yeah.
Fear doesn't let it go. So they'll start barking. They'll want to keep away. And if you take that dog and you put them in a separate room, they'll continue barking and scratching at the door.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're scared. They're fearing for also the safety of the family, so they just don't let it go.
Yeah.
An anxious dog is similar to this, where they'll pace a lot, They'll salivate, you'll see well eye, you'll see a lot of whining. It wants to move, okay? Nervousness will relax when everything is relaxed, but then when something changes, a clap, a shout, sudden movement, they trigger, okay? So definitely nervous dog for sure. And then right now it looks like the anxiety is really just the overstimulation stuff, right? Because you can see his ears are perked, he's completely alert state. He's going into more passive with the way he's sitting on his hips now, whereas before he was completely like this. So he's starting to relax a little bit, but he's so stuck in being this way that it's gonna be a bit before you finally fully see him chill, okay? So, as you mentioned earlier, genetically, German Shepherds are meant to sheep herd and protect, okay? So that's gonna be a part of him. We cannot take that away, okay? And this is true with like 98% of the dogs that I train. Very rare that I get a dog that doesn't care about the front doorbell ringing, that doesn't care about dogs across the other side of the fence, right? All that stuff is normal behavior. It's just not acceptable in our world, right? It doesn't translate well. Because then if like the neighbor's dog is out and then they get in a fight, then we have liability, then we have veterinary bills, then we have, oh, my dog needs stitches and all that stuff, right? But technically speaking, if dogs were left to be dogs, all that stuff would be fine. Does that make sense? So I like that you're incorporating the prong collar because you're in the step in the right direction. Prong collar was designed to mimic a dog bite. That's why it looks the way it looks. Most people look at it and they go like, oh my God, it looks like a medieval torture device. And when you understand why it's designed and how it's designed, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Because dogs are physical creatures, they nip and bite each other, okay? Going back to the scenario of the neighbor's dog going after him and you picking him up, and I think you said he peed, right? So potentially that could have been a catalyst for everything, but regardless, I think you would have seen this behavior anyways because genetically he's already a nervous dog, okay? So typically what happens is we have 6 months, a year, and 2 years, okay, in a dog's growth lifeline or whatever. At 6 months, we have terrible twos brain, if you're familiar with kids, teenager body. At a year, you have terrible twos brain, teenager body. At a year, they get adult body, teenager brain. At 2 years, you get adult dog. Okay? And you're right at 9 months. So for example, I had a German Shepherd that I trained. She was European line. She was very beautiful. Her name was Peaches. They got her at 2 months. And that was when I was still doing puppy training of my own. And they're like, oh my God, this is the perfect dog. She's so quiet. She's so calm. And I said, well, wait till she's 6 months. And they're like, we don't believe it, right? Sure enough, 6 months, she found her voice and started barking at everything, right? And then they give me a call. They're like, Jesse, we need you to come back. You were right. I'm like, I know I was right. It's pretty typical, okay? So if it doesn't happen at 6 months, it might happen at a year because then we have teenager phase, right? At 2 years is when you know you have, for the most part, your dog, okay? Very rare that something after the age of 2 could happen that would change the dog's temperament. So for example, I had a golden doodle named Taco that I trained like about 3 years ago, a completely social dog. At around 4 to 5 years old, the owner was walking down the sidewalk and an off-leash dog ran across the street and attacked her dog. Like a switch, the next day the dog was dog reactive and dog aggressive, okay? We trained him, we stopped the reactivity, and he was able to come back to sociability in controlled context because the off-leash dog attack creates distrust, okay? And dogs are funny in the sense that obedience-wise, they don't generalize things. So sit inside the home, sit in front of the home, sit at PetSmart are all different. But in this case, it was attacked by one dog and the next day, all dogs are bad. You see that? So here, whether or not that moment really is the cause for all this, maybe. But honestly, I think just in time, you would have seen it anyways. Okay, now was the situation handled correctly? In his eyes, no. But you didn't know, you did with what you knew. So if I'm walking my dogs and I'm charged by an off-leash dog, I have the ability to stop that dog from charging us so that there's never an interaction. Yep, good job. So that my dogs see that and they go, you have the ability to ward off threats. And that's actually what creates trust and security. Does that make sense? So it's very common because most people don't know what to do. And then when the situation is there, they panic, right? Yes. So that's why I'm here, because I'll teach you all these things. And in time, that creates more trust in you because he goes, okay, cool, you are the protector. A lot of times people get dogs to protect them, right? And then they're surprised when dogs have issues, and they go right because they don't know what to protect from, right? I'm like, you as the person are logical, and you go, that's not a threat, that's not a threat, that's not a threat. He's unable to decipher that. Okay, so that's all stuff that we can clear up. Nothing I've not seen before.
Yeah.
This is my specialty. But this is what I mentioned earlier. At some point, he would relax, but you can still see how the brain wants to move. Okay, and then the more you just kind of dedicate yourself to continuously reinforcing that sitting position, the more and more he'll start to settle. Okay, questions so far?
I think one context that comes to mind is we had a painter come to like the house. He had to do housework, and I think everything that you said about the nervous dog totally makes sense. He has a kennel at home that we keep him in when we're not there, and then when somebody like to do housework or to do like the painting, we put him in the kennel for that, and the same thing, like he'll bark even though he's in his kennel. And then, so I was like sitting in there with him. Eventually he relaxed, but then, like you said, if the painter like said, hey, I'm done or whatever, like he would start barking again. So I'm excited to see how we'll like be able to also fit in the context of like
In the home and
like when like workers can be here.
Aside from like if there's stimuli in the environment, is he okay in the kennel?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's fine. He's no separation anxiety or anything like that.
No,
Good.
he seems to like it. There's been a handful of times that like we'll put him in there, we leave, we'll hear some barking, but we have like a little in-home camera that we set up for a little while. Originally he was like towards the front of the house, you could like look out a window, and usually he was just like watching everybody go by. We actually just recently moved his crate to like our little office. There's a window, but it just faces a house that nobody walks in between that little alleyway. So I think it might be a little bit better. It's just like wait, let's.
Yeah, I agree, because just less stimuli.
Yeah.
Like looking out the window is like a dog's TV,
Yeah.
right? But unfortunately, especially if you have a reactivity that's starting to develop and stuff, in time, all of a sudden he's just barking at everything that's going by. So I would agree that you want the kennel to be a quiet, calm place. Dogs sleep 16 to 20 hours a day. So chances are if you're kenneling him while you're at work and he's in there for 8 hours, he's just sleeping. He doesn't need to have any kind of visual. Okay? Before booking the consult, did you do any research on the methods that we use for training?
Yeah, we were both checking these out.
Okay, so you know I use prong and remote collar. I use prong sparingly. Okay, prong is a great tool, but it requires a bit more technical skill. And because I deal with a lot of leash reactivity, typically my clients walk their dogs like this because they're constantly afraid that the dog might randomly lunge at a person or dog, and that constant tension creates more frustration. Okay, with remote collar, less technical skill. Right off the bat, you get off-leash control. Very easy to understand, very intuitive because it's buttons, and everything we do nowadays is buttons, right? Cars start at the press of a button. We have our phone that used to be buttons, right? It's much easier for a person to understand, and I like to refer to it as a bite on a button. Okay, so dogs are physical creatures; they nip and bite each other. So like your prong collar is meant to mimic like the dog teeth, so that we could recreate that bite. So whenever you pull up on that prong, you're creating pressure, closing the prongs together, so you're slowly biting Gideon. And the moment he gives you what you want, what are you doing?
Release.
And that bite goes away. You see the communication there? So think of the remote collar similarly, except it's at the press of a button. Okay? Have you guys ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist?
Yes.
Have you ever had the muscle stimulator? That's an e-collar. Okay, so a lot of people think of it as electrocution. They think of it as a shock collar, but it's not. It's electric, but not electricity is how I like to describe it. Okay, so if you go to a physical therapist and they're using the TENS system on you, they'll say, tell us when it becomes too much, right? And they'll slowly increase it, and then you go, oh, that's too much. And then they dip it down and they let it do its job, right? It's similar for remote collar training. We start low, we work our way up until we find the number that he responds to, and then we start working from there. Does that make sense? And I walk you through all of this. Now, were you guys thinking of a board and train, or were you thinking about in person?
I think potentially a little bit of both.
Okay.
kind of depending on how things are going. I think like having the boarding option would be really awesome, but I think like starting with like in-person training.
Okay. So I'm very effective with my training, not to sound egotistical.
Yeah.
Okay. If you do the in-person, you're not going to need the board and train.
Okay. Sweet.
Okay.
Awesome.
So the only reason why I bring that up is because I know you mentioned earlier that you're very busy.
Yeah.
The training is very like, how do you say? At the end of the first class, you're going to walk out with like, wow. And then you're going to do the training during the week, and you go, it's actually working.
Yeah.
Then you're going to come back, and it's not going to be perfect, but you're going to come back going, this was great. Okay, 99% of the time, that's what it is. That 1% is when I'm dealing with very extreme, severe cases. Okay,
Yeah.
so with the in-person, it's like a little cat there. It's once a week for an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes if you're very busy, like I get clients that are like doctors or nurses, and they have rotating schedules.
Yeah.
So then I can't see them on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
It doesn't impact the training. Whether we train inside my building or we train outside at the park, it does not impact the training. Okay, regardless of where the location is, we're gonna get the results. Okay, it's just a matter of are you following through with the instructions. Okay, so I always encourage in person
Yeah.
because you learn so much more.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am also hands off in terms of the training, but it's very much like this.
Yeah.
I coach you through it, but you can already start to see how it's impacting them.
Yeah.
But because the prong collar can only provide so much pressure,
Yeah.
it's not enough to get him down to a 0-1. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like
Yes.
right now he's at a 4 to 5, whereas earlier he was about at an 8. Does that make sense? So we meet up, you have your dog, you have the system I recommend, and I walk you through everything. Okay, I very rarely, if ever, touch the dog. So this does a couple of things. For you, you're learning everything from ground zero, right? From start to finish, it's all you. The other thing is, nothing is tied to me. And this is what most trainers, like they'll train the dog in front of you, and I used to do that.
Yeah.
But then when COVID happened, nobody wanted me touching their dogs.
Yeah.
I used to do home to home before, so I would actually be meeting you in your house,
Yeah.
but nobody wanted me coming into their home. So I had to devise a way to train dogs and get the results while at the same time trying to work around this whole thing that happened, right? So that's how I came up with like the social distance dog training,
Yeah.
whereas like I knew I could train a dog without having to touch them, but no one believed it. And then I got my first client, and then she did the testimonial video, and then training just went through the roof. Okay, so I've broken it down. It's very simple to understand. It's very easy to do, just because it's again you and the remote collar, and it's very logical and very kind of step by step. Okay, so that when you leave here, you have a methodology to recreate at home, and then if we're training here, logically, the number would most likely be lower. So when you go outside, your number is most likely going to be higher. So that's already part of the work done. So you go, okay, we were at 30 at Jesse's facility, so we're anticipating we're going to be higher than 30 when we're in the neighborhood. But again, I help you figure all that stuff out step by step. Okay? Questions so far?
That sounds good. Just one more thing. Like you mentioned how it's like he will respond to like biting because that's how like dogs like communicate. I definitely didn't say that as well as you, but that point that you mentioned, yeah, we definitely, something that is not like really a problem behavior, but something that like we are struggling with additionally at home is the boundary of like him nibbling us.
Yeah.
It's like a real struggle, especially with me, especially whenever I wear loose clothing like this. Especially bathrobes, like every time we put on a bathrobe, he'll like be nibbling at it. And so I can imagine that this will also translate like maybe e-collar, him
Potentially.
learning like,
So what you're dealing with there is frustration behavior.
okay,
Okay. Dogs are very mouth-based creatures. They express everything through their mouth. They show affection with their mouth, nibbling sometimes. Like some clients, some of the dogs will like nibble on their arms and stuff. That's to show affection. Whether or not the owner accepts it is a separate thing.
okay,
With play, they nip and pull at their
Yeah.
jowls and everything as a form of correction. Like this here, if you can see, is a dog bite. It's 10 stitches, and that was a dog that didn't want to go in a kennel. He had never bit anybody before, and he's not been anybody since. This happened about 4 years ago, 2019. He was about a year old. I was trying to load him in a kennel, and he had never been loaded in a kennel before, so he freaked out and he panicked. So he needed to stop me, and that's how he stopped me, right? So, but he wasn't an aggressive dog. So they're very mouth-based, so when they get frustrated, that's where we see chewing. like chewing on furniture, in this case, pulling at loose clothing and stuff like that. It's also a sign of overstimulation, okay? So typically how it works with these frustration-based behaviors is after the first week of the training with the healing exercise, a lot of that stuff goes away, okay? Because now the dog is learning how to be calm. So the nibbling and the chewing is the symptom of a problem. This is the problem, the inability to relax. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now, if the behaviors persisted, let's say we hit the second to third class, and you're like, Jesse, he's not changed with the nibbling stuff. I go, now we will correct it, what I call directly. Indirect is we're working on a separate thing, and that separate thing ends up fixing other unrelated things. And then direct is, no, he's still doing it. Then I go, we will correct them for the behavior itself now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. And this will also help. Last week, or this past week, I came home in the kennel. He has like a plastic tray, and the plastic tray was like destroyed. And we were really surprised that like we're reading online German Shepherds at this age are called land sharks, and we were like, this land shark destroyed this with these teeth, like, and that makes sense. I hope that like with the indirectly at first.
Yeah, that may require kennel training. The other thing would be, so the issue with stuff that happens in the kennel is that it happens when you're gone. It's the biggest problem, right? So in some cases, what I recommend is opting for a different style kennel so that there's nothing to destroy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I recommend, for example, Roughland kennels. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah.
So the travel ones? Yes. It's like impossible for the dog to one, escape, but then also chew stuff. But then also, if you ever travel, that's what we use in our transport van. It's loaded with Roughland kennels, so in case, God forbid, there were to be an accident, the dogs it's crash tested. The dogs are safe. It's a smaller kennel, but they're fine. Okay. Especially if he's one to destroy. Because he could. So actually, and coincidentally, it was a German Shepherd puppy. It was a young Shepherd puppy. It was about 4 months. Owner went out of town for like 2 weeks, and the dog walker accidentally left the kennel unlocked. Puppy escaped and then chewed on a plastic lawn chair, and a strip of plastic punctured the puppy's esophagus and it bled out, right? So that's the other thing with destructive behaviors is if he ingests. I've also had dogs eat socks, and that's also very dangerous, right? So I would opt for, if not that, something where you're removing anything he can destroy. Now, if he's being a brat and like barking in the kennel and stuff, we have to correct that. We can correct that. The only issue is we can't correct him chewing on things if we're not present to correct it. Right. But it's possible that through training itself, it could resolve those issues too. It's just one of those things that I can't guarantee. Because of the fact that you're absent. Okay. Other questions so far? So the way the training typically starts out is the first thing we cover is heel, okay, which is leash walking. Reason is leash pulling and leash reactivity are the two most common things we deal with, okay? Lunging and barking on a leash and then pulling. So I like to start with heel because that's what everybody wants to work on. Also, heel is one of the most beneficial commands you can teach your dog. My style of heel is very strict. If I take 1 step, the dog takes 1 step. If I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. And this is the completely slack leash. It sounds complicated. It sounds fancy. It is not. It's very simple to teach. I usually get it done within 15 to 20 minutes. And then you go off and rinse and repeat. The class is an hour, of course. But you go off, rinse, repeat for a week. You come back. You give me feedback, and we build from there. Okay. And the reason for this is, as you can see, overstimulated. If you go out into the environment, and there's a ton of stimuli in the environment, he has to block all that stuff out in order to walk with you to that degree, right? He has to focus. Teaching the dog to focus then teaches the dog how to be calm, because you have to be calm in order to be focused, right? Like especially if I'm trying to do, like even saying it, like I can't be like super excited and then trying to like do something unless this thing that I'm doing is exciting. Does that make sense? So for the dog, the heel, the walk itself should be calm, focused. This is what we're doing, as opposed to this. This is not going to walk with you perfectly. Does that make sense? It's like with a kid. When kids are in class, they're not excited. They're calm. Maybe bored, but because they're learning something there. Does that make sense? So we start with heel. Also, most people in the city of Chicago walk their dogs 3 times a day, 7 days a week. So that's 3 times a day, 7 days a week. You're practicing and rehearsing this behavior. Now, because you have a nervous dog, Nervousness is a stress response. E-collar is a stressor. So what do you think we're going to see?
See more reactivity at first.
Not reactivity,
Response.
more
Nervous.
nervous behavior. Okay? It's normal.
Yeah.
So we put the dog under stress because we're training.
Yeah.
He becomes more nervous. We work him through the nervousness. And then he learns how to handle it better.
Yeah.
Okay? So as humans, if you don't learn how to handle stress, you're not going to learn how to deal with stress in the future. Does that make sense? So like parents that shelter their kids from stuff, they end up not being very great with handling
Yeah.
life because life has a lot of stressors, right? You're meeting me here. I did not always have this. This is 15 years of work. I started my business. I started training dogs around 2010. 2012, I established Canine Perspective in Chicago. 2019, I opened up to a brick and mortar in Logan Square. What happened in 2020?
COVID.
Yeah, 6 months later.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing could have prepared me for that. Obviously, nothing could have prepared anybody for that, right? But because I had handled all these stressors those first 9 years of growing my business, irate clients, people being rude, people on the street trying to fight me because they don't like that I train with e-collar, just all the bullshit that comes with trying to run a business. When I came to that problem in 2019, I stressed out, but I obviously handled it because I was used to handling stress. And now I can handle even more stress. See how that works? Same thing for the dog. If we constantly shelter and bubble the dog from stress, they don't know how to handle it. Okay, so we have to expose them to it, teach them how to work through it, teach them how that he's technically in control. Because if he's being nice and obedient and walking with you, nothing is happening with the stressor.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we actually build confidence this way. So in the beginning, not uncommon, we might see more nervousness, anxiety, panting, salivating. It's all normal, okay? But that's why we have to repeat it, okay? So if we take someone who's like an EMT, a paramedic, I've heard some stories, the stuff that they see on the first day is crazy. It's stressful. But then they go the next day, and eventually it's just a day in the office. Does that make sense? Same thing here. So I show up, cover the heel stuff, give your homework, go off, rinse and repeat. Okay, you come back week 2, you give me feedback. Hey Jesse, we noticed this, he's doing good here, he's calmer in the house, he's not calmer in the house, he's stopped chewing on my loose clothing, right? You give me feedback, okay, cool, this sounds normal, we're gonna tweak some things, make some adjustments, we're gonna increase the level, we're gonna work on the second half of heel because it's a 2-part exercise, okay? Go off, rinse and repeat. Come back, class 3, how are we doing, right? Usually at that point, it's just a couple of questions. I give you the answers, and then we usually go into duration work, which is using an object like that, or we go into recall, pending what the owner wants to work on. I usually try to go into recall sooner because recall takes the longest to teach. Heel is super fast because it's just walk with me. Recall is get over here. What ends up happening is once you start training it, the dog ends up not wanting to leave your side because they don't want the collar to turn on, which then makes it a problem. Okay, it's part of the process, but that's why it takes so long. Okay. Question on any of that stuff so far? For the stuff that is in home, okay, once we get to a point and you're like, hey Jesse, things are going good, he's calmer, whatever, but we're still having barking when people come over and stuff, that's when we would schedule it in home. Okay. Having people come over, there's a specific way to do it to help him learn that he does not need to be territorial and that he needs to relax. The nervous stuff too, we can most likely cover within that in-home. We'll see how he does because it's really play it by ear. Every case is different. But expect if you're in the house hanging out and then he randomly hears somebody shout outside, he's probably gonna bark. Okay, it's normal. He doesn't understand that's just a neighbor telling or yelling at his son, get back inside or something, right? He's just I heard a sound and I'm letting you guys know I heard that sound, right? What we do want to do is have the ability to stop it, okay? Which is very easy. I can teach that no problem, okay? When it comes to people coming over, there's a chance that once we cover that exercise and he's calmed down, he'll just go to this, okay? So if your dog, he becomes nervous, but he's not how'd you say it? Like a genetic mess with the nervousness. I see some stuff, okay, where I'll tell the owner, you're gonna be constantly on this guy because they're just genetically that bad. You see how he's already calming down and he's relaxing. He even went to his side there. This is all good for me, and we're not even doing that much. You're just literally doing this. So once you have the tool that gives you way more effective communication, it's going to be even better. Okay. But I'm not worried about once we get there. If it is an issue, we can resolve it. No problem. Okay. So what really dictates the length of time and the cost of training is how well trained do you want your dog to be? Okay. If you could have the life that you wanted with Gideon here, what does that look like?
We want him to be very trained. Like I think we want to make him like as trained as possible.
Okay.
I think just like being able to have people over, it's not a big deal. Be able to take him out in the backyard, walk with him, and it's not a hassle. It's fun for everybody. Being able to like take him off leash if we like go on a hike and we have extra space where he can run around. Like having the confidence and trust in him and like him trusting us too. I think would be awesome.
Sure. So remote collar warns you that the off-leash training. So we have 3, 6, 9, and 12-week programs. Okay. The 3-week is really for people that are dealing with leash reactivity, and that's all they care about. I want to fix their leash reactivity and walk my dog in peace, and not have to worry about it. The 6-week is walk my dog and then calm my dog. The 9-week is walk my dog, calm my dog, and have my dog sit still for a while. And the 12-week is like I want my dog fully off leash trained, sit, stay down, come, place, heel. So there's what I call the family pet 6. Sit, stay down, come, place, heel. Those 6 commands are all meant to be functional. I think now they're kind of seen as cute tricks that you can teach your puppy, and they can be, but they're actually meant to be functional. They're meant for you to live your life with your dog. If it's like, hey, go get me a beer from the fridge, that's a trick. I guess that's also mandatory. Maybe paw, because that's a fun thing. But yeah, those 6 commands are meant for you to be able to take your dog wherever you want. Okay. So like I would put you, if you're wanting a completely off-leash trained dog, definitely 12.
Yeah.
If you're like, we want him to have the behaviors under control, and then we don't need all 6 commands to be off-leash reliable, then you could do 9. It's completely up to you. Okay. With the 12, it also gives us more classes just in case if he's maybe more nervous than I thought, right? We have plenty of time to work through all that stuff, okay? I don't foresee it, but I've been wrong in the past. But from what I've seen so far, I think it's gonna be just fine, okay? With the longer programs, once we hit around class 9, that's where we start to space things out, okay? So the first 8 to 9 classes expect to be back to back to back to back because we're just stacking things on each other. But eventually you have a ton of homework, okay? It's in order to get to off-leash reliability, it's about time and repetition. So what I do is we teach everything, make sure we get the behaviors under control. You start to apply them in the home. We start to transfer things to the long leash to build towards off-leash. And then I'll go, take this and come back when you're ready, okay? So I might not see you for 2 months. I might not see you from one season to the next season, okay? You come back when you're ready because once you get to long leash, it requires you go to the park. You work with your dog in a distracting setting, right? And sometimes your plan is to go out to the park and it's a day like this, So, or like life happens and you get super busy. Like I had an in-home yesterday and they hadn't really done much training for 2 months because life happened. I go, it's no big deal. It's what it is. So I've learned not to tell people to come back in a month because then stuff happens and they're like, oh, I only practiced 3 times. And I was like, why are we here, right? So yeah, I'll tell you, come back when you're ready. And then you come back for class 10. And you're like, hey, Jesse, this is where we're at. And I go, show me, right? I go, cool, this is incorrect, this is incorrect, because people tend to forget things. And we'll fix it, and then I'll give them a few other things, go off and come back when you're ready, okay? And we keep doing that until you feel like, hey, we're very confident in our dog's training and also in our own training, because it's a 2-part thing, right? You have your dog, and then you have your own personal skill set with handling and training your dog. Does that make sense? So I've had dogs that have been, like for example, with board and trains, the dogs leave here, they've had lots of training, but the owner does not know how to do any of it.
Right.
So they have to catch up to the training, right? It's like buying a car with a lot of fancy things, and then you have to read the manual to learn those fancy things, right? With the in-person, it's great because you're growing as your dog is growing, right? But there's also going to be some delay there because you're learning as your dog is learning, right? So everything's about time. Plus, you need to make mistakes. You need to find plateaus and get stuck. So I can go, this is how we fix it. And you go, oh, okay. And now you've learned that much more. Make sense? Questions? He's most likely hit his height. He might get a bit heavier. Okay. Very rare that I see a dog grow later on in life.
Yeah.
Usually like the Great Danes and stuff.
Yeah.
Most dogs hit their height at 6 months, and then that's why they're skinny.
Yeah.
They're tall and skinny, and then at a year they start to kind of fill out and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit bigger, but definitely some weight. Okay. I would put him on the Dog Show Black Edition, and Tina will send you the information, of course. It's meant for a 70-pound dog and over.
Yeah.
Okay. Is he just at the cusp?
He's 60.
60 right now.
Yeah,
61,
okay.
62 now.
So the fact that he's 60 doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I could put it on my 8-pound Chihuahua. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
All it means is we get more from less.
Yeah.
So on a lower powered collar, his number would be higher, whereas on a higher powered collar, his number would be lower.
Right.
Okay. So he'll grow into it. And then we don't have to worry about like, will my dog override the collar? I've had that happen before. It's the most powerful collar there is. It's the best training collar that there is. It's a 1 mile one mile range, and it's fully waterproof, both the transmitter and the remote that he would be wearing. Okay. Question on any of that stuff?
Yeah.
That would be like why when we're walking him with the prong collar and he doesn't really like respond, that's like why.
It's
right?
not
Because
enough.
It's not, yeah, okay.
Even if you're like using it like correctly and applying corrections,
Yeah.
it's very common that owners will hit a plateau and they'll go, Jesse, I'll correct the dog and I'll do all these things, and
Yeah.
he just does not care. I go, it's because the mindset is overriding the collar,
Yeah.
right? And remember, dogs are physical creatures. They nip and bite each other. They nip and bite each other to the point where they will puncture each other. You won't do that to your dog. So that's where you're limited. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas with a remote collar, we're not worried about punctures, but I get intensity through the contractions.
Yeah.
So that's what allows me to get as close to a dog bite as possible without actually physically harming the dog. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chances are, once you get far enough in the training, you probably won't even use your prong anymore. It'll just be the remote collar. It all comes down to your personal comfort and confidence with like the tools that you're using. But more often than not, that's usually how it works. Or the client will use the prong just for a quick like go pee and poop or whatever, and then they'll bring them back inside. Otherwise, I would say most of the time it's just a remote collar. Okay. So the next thing or next most common question that we get is, when does the e-collar go away? In my book, it doesn't when you need it. Okay. So inside the house, if Gideon's a great dog, you don't need it, right? You go to your parents' house, he's a great dog, you don't need it. You go for a walk and he's a bit pushy, you need it.
Yeah.
Going to a dog park, you need it. Going to be off leash, you need it, right? The reason for this is what's called opportunistic behavior. You guys drive?
Yeah.
Do you go on the expressway?
Yeah.
Do you go the speed limit? Yeah. You see a squad car, what happens?
Yeah.
Slow down.
Slow down, right? That's opportunistic behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, all animals do it. It's part of survival instinct.
Yeah.
Okay, so think of that e-collar as a cop on a collar.
Yeah.
When it's present, he's going to behave better. He's going to be much more obedient.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you shouldn't always have to be using the button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. If we're doing that, that tells me that we weren't following through with the training well.
Yeah.
Okay. It's present in case something happens. Okay. I've had clients have their dogs off leash and come across a coyote in Lincoln Park. I've had clients be out at the park and some kid blows up a random firework and it spooks their dog and their dog takes off, right? These things that you really can't account for, that you're able to regain control in situations where you've lost control. Also had clients' dogs be attacked by off-leash dogs, right? A lot of stuff out there you can't account for. So it's present in case you need it, or if maybe he decides like, do I have to listen today? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you always have the ability to reinforce, but otherwise, if he's a great dog in other contexts, you don't need it. Okay, has nothing to do with my methods, has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer. That's just how it is all over the world with all animals. Okay, questions on that?
No, I would say our parents live in Maine,
Mhm.
so we would love for him to be an off-leash dog, and in those situations, like, we would always put that on
Correct. Yeah.
for when he's
Yep.
off-leash, so.
So like my guys, they're old now. They're 15, but they've been off leash trained for about 12 to 13 years now. If I know they're going to be off leash, they have their collars on.
Yeah.
Okay, now my guys are trained to the point where they don't need collars if I just walk them around the neighborhood and stuff.
Yeah.
But if I know they're going to be off leash, I'll put them on. And I can't tell you the last time I've had to push the button,
Yeah.
you know, because I did my training so long ago.
Yeah.
But it's just there as a reinforcer. The collars also last a long time. So mine lasted about 10 years before I actually had to get new ones.
Yeah.
The most common thing that we do come across is that the battery is a rechargeable lithium battery. So at some point they do give. The battery itself is like 25-ish bucks.
Yeah.
You go on Doctor, you can order it, you open it up, you put it in, you close it up, good to go.
Yeah.
Okay? Other questions?
We were also interested in potentially boarding him, just like so then we could
Travel.
enjoy some time.
Sure.
Is there like a certain like we want to train him a little bit before then, and I also don't want him to like learn new bad behaviors while we're not away or like not well or like while we're boarding him. But I was wondering if like there's a certain amount of training that we need to go through in order to like board him here.
So you have a couple of options.
Yeah.
One would be chances are by the time you need to board them, like let's say it's like a month from now,
Yeah.
and you had already started training, he'd be fine to board.
Okay.
Okay. Dogs that have trained with us are not required to attend daycare once a week. Okay. So dogs that we've not trained, so we have an evaluation process. It's a 3-day thing. And then on top of that, they have to come once a week for daycare for at least a month prior to the first boarding stay.
Yeah.
After the first boarding stay, they have to continuously come to daycare once a week in order to continue boarding. That's to help us keep the structure with those dogs.
Yeah.
In the past, they used to be more lenient, and then when they would return, they would destroy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was like, yeah, that costs money, and I'm not gonna, and plus I don't want the liability of a dog
Yeah.
injuring itself. So now we've made it for them a requirement.
Yeah.
For dogs who have trained with us, they are not required to do that. Okay. Now I do recommend that he do still have the evaluation, at least 2 of the 3 days.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just so he comes here, gets to experience the day here,
Yeah.
go under stress because he's like, I'm away from mom and dad, and
Yeah.
then you pick him up at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay. I've had dogs that I trained to be dropped off without any kind of introduction,
Yeah.
and they go under a lot more stress to the
Yeah.
point where they were becoming defensive with the handlers.
Yeah.
We have the ability to handle them,
Yeah.
but then I go, well, now we have liability, and we're not charging extra for this,
Yeah.
right? But by doing at least 2 of the 3 days,
Yeah.
it's worked out really well. And then like I have clients from like St. Charles, from Hoffman Estates, from Indiana, from Evanston, Waukegan, all over like the outer suburbs and stuff. I don't expect them to come once a week,
Yeah.
right, for daycare and stuff. So they like we have one dog in particular. His name's Doug, who was like one of the worst cases I've had in my whole career, and he does great here, even though we only see him those very spare times that he's coming to board,
Yeah.
because we're all on the same page. What they do at home and what we do here, it's all the same stuff, and that's what helps the dog continue like this. Okay.
I think we would definitely be interested in that because right now Max works from home like 2 days a week, but the other days he's in there for like we have somebody walk him at lunchtime, so he gets like that. But I think it would be great for him to have like daycare once a week
Sure.
because just for him like to have
I also think just
Engagement.
for us too. Then
Yeah.
he can go on vacation. We know he's in
yeah
good hands, and again, we don't have to be with him
somewhere that he's
24/7.
like comfortable.
Yeah. And everything that I teach you, we reinforce here.
Yeah.
So like if he were to become reactive or bark at somebody, we would correct it,
Yeah.
right? So then it's like everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Because clients have had it where like the dogs regress a little bit because
Yeah.
it's like vacation time for them,
Yeah.
you know? It's never anything permanent. Like once the structure kicks back in again, the dog will go back to how they are.
Yeah.
But they do like the fact that everything's on the same page here.
Yeah.
Now, on top of that, like I run a quiet kennel. The barking that you're hearing is actually my neighbor. Okay. So next door, you know the dogs, the canine dogs for the CTA, they all go next door. Okay, that black and kind of beige building, and he's renting our back space now. So this is 18,000 square feet total. Okay, so he has the back like 6,000 feet for like the next 2 weeks, and then I'm taking over it again.
Yeah.
But we run a quiet kennel here, so there could be 60, 70 dogs, and it's still quiet. Okay, we do hourly rotations
Yeah.
on the hour. So like, let's say dogs have pottied, breakfast has been served, and it's the start of the day. 8 o'clock, he might go on duration, which is go to the bed. Other dogs go on treadmill. Other dogs go in play group, and all that is happening. And then the buzzer goes off, and then he might go from duration to a play group
Yeah.
for the next hour, and then after that he might go to treadmill for the next hour, and then after that they go to the kennels for decompression time for an hour, and then it repeats again. Okay, so it's a structured day. It's not a free for all. It's not like just do what you want. whenever you want, all day. And then of course, like clients will tack on, you know, if they want to have a walk, or if they want to do training, a little training session where we like work on stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
That's also doable if you'd like. Otherwise, yeah, any dogs have trained with us, not required to get daycare. He's welcome to come to daycare if you'd like, but he's not mandated to have to do the once a week or anything like that. Okay. Other questions? So that's pretty much it in terms of like the most common questions we get in how the daycare runs here. When it comes to booking the training and everything, that will be done with Tina.
Okay.
If you know, like you want to do 9 or 12, what have you, you can simply email her and say, hey Tina, we want to do 12. Sign us up, and here's our schedule. Okay, because that's what she's going to ask you for. Please give windows of time as opposed to specific times, because she's working with multiple clients. That it's hard when people just give these 1 hour increments. Okay, and then she'll find a time that works best for everybody, and then we would meet for once a week for an hour. If you have to cancel, reschedule, it's perfectly fine. If you cancel outside of 48 hours, no problem. We just reschedule or whatever. If you cancel within 48 hours, we give everybody a freebie cancellation because things happen. But if you cancel again, it will count as a class simply because it's hard to fill these gaps, especially once we move to Oz Park. Okay, so once we're over with spring and this kind of rainy season, I start to train out of Oz Park. You guys familiar with that place?
No, I don't think so.
It's in Lincoln Park.
Oh.
It's the busiest park in Chicago. Okay, you got skateboarders, rollerbladers, dogs, people on bikes, tennis games, baseball games. It's busy. Okay, so you're going to be in the thick of it. So people like it just because we're training in a real environment. But if you get started sooner, chances are we'll be here. But then somewhere near the middle, we'd most likely transition to outside. Okay. Oh yeah. So then you can schedule with her, and then if anything pops up, or if there's anything you forgot to ask, feel free to let her know. And if it pertains to me, I'll send a response. Otherwise, she'll answer it for you. For the daycare and or boarding stuff, he just needs to be updated on vaccinations, and then we'll need a new fecal. Okay. So once you're ready for that, then that's when you want to do your fecal. It's usually pretty quick. If you go to your vet, it's usually like a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. Okay, once you submit that and he's all clear, then we can start the process. Okay.
Cool.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think, yeah, we definitely probably want to do the 12 week.
Sure. Yeah, think about it, mull it over. And like, let's say you do the 12 and you use up 10 and you're like, we're really happy and we don't know if there's anything more to teach. We can convert the last 2 to credit and you can put it towards a boarding stay. Don't have an issue with that. That's one of my clients did too, because she was like, I'm not sure how much I want. And I said, well, it's cheaper per class because you're choosing 12.
Right.
And then if you don't use them all and you're like, oh, you know, this is great, you know, well, can we just either pocket 1 and put 2 towards boarding or something? I don't care.
Awesome.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Well, it was a pleasure meeting you guys.
Yeah, great to meet you.
If anything pops up, like I said, feel free to reach out, let us know.